Hidden signs. Your avoidant ex is cracking under pressure. Let me tell you something that no one talks about enough. People with avoidant attachment styles, those who pulled away from you, needed space, or insisted they weren't ready, don't just float off into a stress-free sunset after a breakup. They feel it too. They just don't show it the same way you might. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice the cracks starting to show. And here's the kicker. Those cracks don't mean you should rush back into their arms. They just reveal the truth. Your absence matters more than they admit. When an avoidant ex starts to feel the pressure of losing you, they won't come back with a dramatic declaration of love. That's not their style. Instead, they test the waters quietly. They reach out in subtle, almost confusing ways. You might notice them watching every story you post, linking photos from months ago, or sending a random text that seems meaningless on the surface. Something like, "Hey, just thought of you when I saw this," or "Hope everything's good with you." These little interactions might not look like much, but they are loaded with hidden intention. This is someone who has spent a lot of time convincing themselves they're fine, they needed space, they had to pull away. And now, the silence is louder than they expected. Avoidant individuals struggle with direct vulnerability. Reaching out with "I miss you" or "I regret what happened" feels overwhelming and unsafe to them. So instead, they keep things surface level. They pretend they're just being friendly or that it's just coincidence. But what's really happening underneath is emotional pressure building up. Your absence, which they once insisted was necessary, is starting to feel like a loss. And not just any loss, but one that threatens their emotional equilibrium. They might not admit that to you or even to themselves, but their behavior starts to tell the story. What they're really doing is checking to see if the door is still open. They're looking for evidence that you're still emotionally available, still holding space for them. Because if you are, then they can feel safer. It's not about coming back in a healthy way. It's about soothing their own discomfort without having to deal with real intimacy or emotional accountability. They may even word their messages carefully so that they can retreat without consequence if you don't respond the way they want. This is where you have to be honest with yourself. Don't get caught up in what you wish these messages meant. Look at what they actually are. Breadcrumbs. A way for someone to stay close enough to feel comfort, but far enough to avoid real emotional work. It's not always malicious. It's usually unconscious, but it's still a pattern. And the more you chase the meaning behind these small gestures, the more you end up playing their emotional game. Recognizing this subtle reach out for what it is can give you the clarity to decide what you need, not just what they're ready to offer. After a breakup, especially with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, their behavior can swing dramatically in one direction or the other. On one hand, they might flood their social media with photos, updates, nights out, and bold declarations of how great life is. On the other, they might disappear entirely. No posts, no updates, no trace. Both of these extremes can be confusing, especially if you're still processing the end of the relationship and wondering if they're truly unaffected. But here's what most people miss. Both overactivity and complete silence are coping mechanisms. They aren't indicators of peace. They're signs of internal pressure that hasn't found a healthy outlet. When an avoidant person suddenly starts posting non-stop pictures of social events, inspirational quotes, or even flirtatious content, it's rarely just about sharing. It's often about sending a message, consciously or not. It's an attempt to prove both to themselves and to others that they're fine, that they've moved on, that they're in control. But that performance takes effort. It's curated. And when someone is working that hard to craft a narrative, you can bet they're feeling the opposite of what they're showing. That kind of intensity doesn't come from peace. It comes from pressure. Then there's the opposite reaction. Total withdrawal. No updates, no online presence, maybe even deactivating their accounts. This can feel even more baffling. You might wonder if they've simply cut off the world, if they're indifferent, or if they've already moved on in a clean break. But avoidance is exactly that. Avoidance. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It often means everything is happening internally, but they don't know how to process it or express it. Rather than face their emotions or acknowledge the impact of the breakup, they retreat. They go dark, not because they're at peace, but because they're overwhelmed by what they don't want to feel. These behavioral shifts aren't about you directly, but they do reflect the emotional waves your absence has triggered. It's important not to get caught up trying to decode every post or every silence. Instead, understand that these patterns reveal a lack of emotional regulation. Whether they're overposting or disappearing, both are signs that the story they told themselves that leaving or pulling away would make them feel freer or more grounded isn't holding up under pressure. The appearance of strength or distance doesn't necessarily mean they're not cracking underneath. Often it means exactly the opposite. One of the more subtle signs that your avoidant ex is feeling the pressure is when mutual friends start dropping hints or passing along questions about you. At first, it might seem innocent. Someone casually asking, "Hey, how have you been?" or "Did you hear from them lately?" But behind these small talk moments, there's often a deeper emotional undercurrent. Avoidant individuals are notoriously uncomfortable with direct emotional confrontation or vulnerability, so instead of reaching out to you themselves, they'll use mutual friends as emotional middlemen. It's a way to stay connected while keeping their own walls firmly in place. This behavior can catch you off guard, especially if you thought the breakup was clean or that they wanted complete space. But asking friends about you isn't about gossip or idle curiosity. It's about emotional leakage. It means they're still processing feelings they don't want to admit openly, not even to themselves. When someone who insisted on distance suddenly starts fishing for information through friends, it shows that the story they told themselves about being unaffected isn't quite true. They're still emotionally invested, even if they're unwilling or unable to acknowledge it directly. Using friends as a buffer lets them test the waters without risking rejection or exposure. It allows them to keep a safe emotional distance, maintaining control while still feeling connected in some way. This indirect contact is a way of gauging whether you're moving on, if you're happy, or if you're vulnerable. Information that helps them manage their own emotions and decide what boundaries to keep or break. It's a form of emotional self-protection wrapped in social camouflage. This behavior also reveals the avoidant ex's internal struggle between wanting closeness and fearing it. On one hand, they miss the connection, and on the other, they fear what being open would demand of them. So instead of risking direct communication, they create a network of indirect contact points. Mutual friends become emotional spies, and the avoidant ex becomes a shadow figure watching from a distance. For you, these hints from friends are a double-edged sword. They reveal that your absence has an impact and that your ex is far from indifferent, but they also warn you not to mistake this indirect contact for a genuine desire to reconnect on healthy terms. It's emotional curiosity, not commitment. Recognizing this helps you stay grounded and not get pulled back into the drama of their unresolved feelings. Instead, you can use this insight to protect your own emotional boundaries and keep moving forward with clarity. When an avoidant ex starts to feel the pressure of losing control over the emotional space between you, they often try to regain it in indirect and sometimes confusing ways. This can show up as random criticism, passive-aggressive comments, or sudden moments of emotional honesty that seem out of place. These behaviors aren't random. They're a response to feeling like the safe distance they maintained is slipping away. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, it's not necessarily closeness they fear the most, but the loss of control over that closeness. Avoidants thrive on keeping their emotions and relationships at a comfortable distance where they can regulate how much they reveal and when. When you start to seem like you're moving on or handling the breakup better than expected, it threatens their sense of control. They realize that the power dynamic is shifting. Suddenly, they're not the ones setting the emotional tone or pacing the connection. You might be. That loss of control can be unsettling and trigger defensive behaviors. This is why you might notice them. Sending backhanded comments, subtle digs, or mixed signals is a way to provoke a reaction, to pull you back into their emotional orbit on their terms. The aim is to re-establish some control by stirring uncertainty or doubt. When you respond, even defensively, it confirms they still have influence, which can temporarily soothe their discomfort with feeling powerless. At the same time, avoidance might drop sudden moments of vulnerability, but it often feels like emotional honesty with a catch. They might admit to mistakes or acknowledge feelings, but these admissions can be timed strategically or framed to keep the power in their hands. For example, they might say something like, "I never handled things well, but I'm not sure what you want from me now." This statement opens a door, but also keeps it half closed, inviting connection while maintaining distance. It's their way of controlling how much they expose and how much they hold back. Recognizing these emotional power plays is crucial because it helps you see past the surface. These behaviors aren't signs of true openness or readiness for a healthy relationship. They're defense mechanisms designed to keep the avoidant comfortable and in control. Understanding this dynamic allows you to respond thoughtfully, not reactively, and maintain your own boundaries. You don't have to get pulled into their attempts to regain control. You can choose when and how to engage, protecting your emotional well-being while they work through their own discomfort. When an avoidant ex begins to confront emotions they once buried, it's a subtle but significant shift. Avoidant attachment styles are built on a foundation of emotional distancing, pushing feelings aside, minimizing vulnerability, and convincing themselves that they're better off alone. So when you notice signs that they're starting to face those buried feelings, it signals that the emotional pressure they've been avoiding is reaching a tipping point. This might show up as them admitting they didn't handle things well, seeking therapy, or expressing regret in ways they never did before. It's a sign that the emotional walls they built are beginning to crack, even if they're not ready to fully break down and rebuild just yet. This process often begins quietly. It's not usually a grand apology or dramatic confession. Instead, it might be a casual comment dropped in conversation like, "I've been thinking about how I acted," or "I'm trying to work on myself." These statements are loaded with meaning because they indicate self-reflection, something avoidants tend to resist. It means they're acknowledging the parts of themselves and the relationship they once refused to face. Sometimes this might also involve seeking professional help, a counselor, therapist, or coach who can guide them through emotions they've long ignored. Therapy is a powerful sign because it shows a willingness to look inward, to understand their patterns, and to begin the hard work of change. However, it's important to understand that this doesn't automatically mean they're ready to jump back into a healthy relationship or that their feelings for you have suddenly transformational. Growth is a process, and confronting old wounds is just the first step. Many avoidants still struggle with vulnerability and may revert to old habits when faced with stress or conflict. The fact that they're starting to acknowledge their emotions means they're breaking down their defenses, but it doesn't guarantee they've built a new foundation strong enough for a different kind of relationship yet. For you, seeing these signs is a mixed message. It reveals that your absence or the breakup impacted them more than they let on, but it also serves as a reminder to protect your own heart. It's tempting to interpret these admissions as an invitation to reconcile, but it's crucial to remember that true change takes time. Their willingness to confront emotions is a hopeful sign, but it's one step in a longer journey toward emotional maturity. Keeping this in mind allows you to stay grounded, set healthy boundaries, and prioritize your well-being while they navigate their own process of growth. Wrapping this all up, understanding these hidden signs isn't about trying to fix your avoidant ex or waiting for them to change on your timeline. It's about seeing the reality beneath the surface, the cracks that show their emotional walls are shifting, even if slowly and imperfectly. Recognizing these moments gives you power, clarity, and the ability to protect your own heart while they do their internal work. Remember, your peace and growth always come first. Thank you for taking the time to listen and reflect on this journey. Wishing you strength, clarity, and the confidence to move forward with grace. Take care, and until next time,